Hi, this is Mary Jane from Lioness Publications, and I just want to spend a few minutes talking about China, especially with all the tariff things that are going on right now. Everyone is uncertain about what the situation is. They're uncertain whether China is going to capitulate or if Trump is going to do a backstep. And I did in a previous video the economic indications for the United States as it is stemming from the tariffs. And that's actually a pretty important video that I suggest you look at. What we're going to look at is something similar to China. And what I have here is a risk yield and a delta for transit chart. These are proprietary charts based on an algorithm I created. It's proprietary. And it helps me to identify when certain countries or people or corporations are having some activity that I want to investigate. Well, China was having some activity here. Let's take a look at the risk yield here. And by the way, note the green here is indicating the baseline. Above is yield, which is positive. Below is negative, which is risk. Think of that as obstacles, negative influences coming in. Now, we do see quite a bit of activity, more at the beginning of the year and less further down. Now, what we see at the beginning is a momentum move, meaning that we see a shift going, in this case, right up into the positive. Now, we peak right around 3.1, maybe, right around there. And then it just slowly drifts down. Doesn't go into the negative area, though. That's important because that means that, okay, the positive influences were just wearing off, and we're sort of now where they're both equaling each other out. And the rest of the year, there's activity, but it doesn't seem like we have any definite trend. So let's take a look at this one here, which is the delta core transit. And it lets us analyze this type of information a little bit more detail to see, well, yeah, if I subtract one from the other, what's left over? Is it more positive energy? Is it more negative energy? And in this case, we can see that over here, we had negative energy coming into the year, and then it went positive, and now it's just coming back to sort of the baseline point, the 0 point. Now, this is at approximately, again, the March timeframe, which is when China knew about the tariffs. So at this point, their input on that was probably, okay, probably not going to have, it's going to decrease products going out to the United States. But it doesn't actually come down too far, which is a little bit, strange, considering that we're assuming they're going to have tariffs on all their products. One thing I will note is over here, we do have a down dip. And let me note one thing. The darker black line is the core, and the lighter black is the transient. Now, let me explain the difference between the core and the transient. So, for example, if you take the past few days with the stock market, all of that is news about what's going on. That would be heavily reflected in the transient because it's news. It hasn't really, what it's producing is shifts in the markets. And then if they stay around, it actually produces, in this case, products that can't be sold. So then it moves into the core. Now, for an example, take the release of a company's earnings. If the earnings are bad, you're going to have a transient go down because that's the news of the earnings. Now, What happens after that is because the earnings are bad, you might see the transient go up because the news is out already. But then what you'll see is the core start to move in some way. Now, it could be that that was expected, which means the core may not move either way. Or could mean that the company has to do something. So it's going to move in some direction that signifies it has to do something, which could be into the risk. So it has to maybe lay off people, but that in turn would probably provide more money, which moves you back up into the yield. So coming back to this, we've got the nice peak. So China is sort of, okay, they're not popping down into the negative territory. So that's almost saying to me that where are these tariffs actually going for China? Now, I do have a negative here, and that's a transient. And what that can indicate is, and that's at about June. Yeah, June 1st, around that time. So expect some news around that time. And it doesn't translate into anything in the core because it's still sort of bouncing along on this baseline, which is either good or bad. I mean, they've got activity, but it's just sort of basing, But this indicates that maybe there's a deal that gets done. Maybe there's some negotiations that finish up. So this could be a sign of something that happens. Maybe China gives in without giving in. Maybe they don't give in, but they don't say anything. So this could mean a number of factors. But this is, from my impression, China is not, at this point, going to acquiesce to any of the demands that are being made of them by the Trump administration. Hope you enjoyed this and have a great evening. Bye now.